I never imagined my life would turn out this way. My name is Jack, and I thought I had it all figured out. A good job, a nice house, and a beautiful wife named Lisa. We've been married for 5 years, and for the most part, I thought we were happy. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. It was a rainy Tuesday evening when everything changed. Lisa and I had just left her mother's place after a quiet family dinner. The rain was coming down hard, making it difficult to see the road, but I wasn't too worried. I've driven in worse conditions, and I was confident I could get us home safely. Lisa was sitting beside me, chatting away about her day, what we should have for dinner tomorrow, and whether we should take a vacation soon. Just the usual stuff, nothing out of the ordinary. But then, out of nowhere, a truck came speeding down the opposite lane. The driver must have lost control because the truck swerved and slammed into us head-on. The impact was something I'll never forget. The sound of metal crunching, glass shattering, and then, darkness. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. My head was pounding, my vision was blurry, and I felt like I'd been hit by a train. It took me a few moments to remember what had happened. My first thought was Lisa. I needed to know if she was okay. A nurse walked into the room, and I immediately asked her about Lisa. She told me that Lisa was in another room, recovering from surgery. She had some broken ribs and a concussion, but she was going to be fine. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it didn't last long. As I was lying there, trying to make sense of everything, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I reached over and saw that it wasn't my phone, it was Lisa's. It must have gotten mixed up with mine during the chaos of the accident. I'm not the type to go through someone's phone, especially not my wife's, but something compelled me to check the notification. It was a message from a guy named Mark. The text read, "Hope you're okay. I'll cover for you at work. Remember, don't mention us to Jack." My heart skipped a beat. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I scrolled through the conversation, and what I found made my blood run cold. There were months' worth of messages between Lisa and Mark. They weren't just friends, they were lovers. There were photos, plans for secret getaways, and even talks about a future together. All of it right under my nose. I lay there in that hospital bed, feeling like my world had come crashing down. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, had been betraying me. And here I was, hooked up to machines, barely able to move, while she was planning a life with another man. The pain and anger I felt in that moment were unlike anything I'd ever experienced. But as I lay there, something else started to creep in, something darker. I knew I had to confront her, but not in the way she might expect. I wanted her to feel the same pain I was feeling. I wanted her to know what it felt like to be completely blindsided. A few days later, I was discharged from the hospital. My injuries weren't as severe as Lisa's, so I was able to go home first. When I got there, I found her lying in our bed, looking pale and weak. She looked up at me with those big blue eyes, and for a split second, I almost forgave her. Almost. "Hey, babe," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I'm so glad you're okay." "Yeah, me too," I replied, forcing a smile. "We're lucky to be alive." We talked for a bit about the accident, about how close we came to dying. But all the while, I couldn't stop thinking about those messages. I couldn't stop thinking about how she'd betrayed me. I played the role of the concerned husband for the next few days. I took care of her, made sure she was comfortable, did everything a loving husband should do. But underneath it all, I was seething with rage. I started digging deeper into her life, looking for more evidence of her affair. I hacked into her email, checked her call logs, and even followed her when she said she was going to a doctor's appointment. It didn't take long to find more proof. She was still in contact with Mark, even after the accident. They were planning to meet up as soon as she was feeling better. The thought of her sneaking around behind my back made my blood boil. I knew I had to confront her, but I wanted to make sure I had all my ducks in a row first. I wanted to hit her with everything at once, so there would be no room for denial, no room for excuses. One evening, about a week after the accident, I decided it was time. Lisa was sitting on the couch, watching TV, when I walked in with a glass of wine for her. She smiled at me, completely unaware of what was about to happen. "Thanks, honey," she said, taking the glass from me. "You've been so good to me since the accident." "I'm just glad you're okay," I replied, sitting down next to her. We sat in silence for a while, sipping our wine. Then, I turned to her and said, "Lisa, can I ask you something?" "Of course," she replied, her eyes still focused on the TV. "Do you ever feel like something's missing in our marriage?" She looked at me, surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Like maybe we've grown apart. Or maybe, one of us isn't being completely honest." Her face paled. She set her glass down on the coffee table and looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. "Jack, what are you trying to say?" I know about Mark, I said, my voice cold and steady. The room fell silent. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Lisa's face went from pale to flushed in a matter of seconds. Jack, Don't, I interrupted, my voice sharp. Don't try to explain. I've seen the messages, the photos. I know everything. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Not this time. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice trembling. I never meant for this to happen. But it did, I replied, my voice like ice. You betrayed me, Lisa. You destroyed everything we built together. She started to sob, but I didn't let her see me break. I stood up, walked over to the door, and grabbed my jacket. Where are you going? She asked, panic rising in her voice. I need some air, I replied, my voice cold and distant. We'll talk when I get back. I left the house, slamming the door behind me. I got into my car and drove to the nearest bar. I needed something, anything, to take the edge off. I ordered a drink and sat there, nursing it, trying to wrap my head around everything that had happened. That's when I overheard a couple of guys at the bar talking about a private investigator they'd hired to catch a cheating spouse. The idea planted itself in my head, and I knew what I had to do. The next day, I hired a PI to gather more evidence. I wanted concrete proof, something I could use to confront both Lisa and Mark. The PI didn't disappoint. Within a week, he had photos, videos, even a recording of a conversation between Lisa and Mark. It was all there, laid out in front of me like a sick movie plot. Armed with this new information, I decided to confront Mark first. I found out where he worked and waited for him outside his office. When he finally came out, I walked up to him, blocking his path. You Mark? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Yeah, who's asking? He replied, looking me up and down. I'm Jack. Lisa's husband. His face went pale. Look, man, I didn't know she was married. Save it, I interrupted, my voice cold. I'm not here to fight. I just want to talk. He seemed relieved, but I could tell he was still on edge. We walked to a nearby park, where I laid it all out for him, the affair, the accident, everything. By the time I was done, he looked like he was about to throw up. I had no idea, he kept saying, his voice shaking. I swear, I didn't know she was married. Doesn't matter now, I replied, my voice flat. What's done is done. We sat in silence for a while before I finally spoke again. There's one more thing I need you to do. What's that? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I need you to break it off with her. For good. And I want you to do it in front of me. He hesitated, but eventually agreed. We set up a meeting with Lisa at a cafe later that day. I stood outside, watching through the window as Mark sat down across from her. They talked for a few minutes before he finally told her it was over. The look on her face was priceless. She looked devastated, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. When she came out of the cafe, I was waiting for her. She looked at me with tears in her eyes, but I didn't waver. It's over, Lisa, I said, my voice cold and distant. We're done. She tried to apologize, tried to explain, but I didn't want to hear it. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in the rain. That was the last time I saw her. I filed for divorce the next day, and I haven't looked back since. It's been a few weeks now, and I'm starting to feel like myself again. The pain is still there, but it's getting easier to manage. After the divorce papers were filed, I realized I wasn't done. I still needed closure, something more than just walking away. I needed to know why she did it. So, I called her up and asked if she could meet me one last time, just to talk. We met at a quiet park, the same one where I'd confronted Mark. She looked different, tired, worn out, like she hadn't been sleeping. We sat on a bench, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence hung heavy in the air. Why? I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting around each other nervously. I don't know, she said softly. I guess I wasn't happy. Wasn't happy? I repeated, my voice rising. You didn't think to talk to me about that? You just went and found someone else? I'm sorry, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know how to tell you. You didn't know how to tell me, so you just went behind my back? I asked, my voice full of pain. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I'm so sorry, Jack. I never wanted this to happen. But it did, I said, my voice cold. And now we're here. I just hope you realize what you've lost. She didn't say anything, just kept crying. I stood up, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. I loved you, Lisa, I said quietly. I would have done anything for you. But now, it's over. With that, I walked away, leaving her sitting on the bench, sobbing into her hands. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I knew it was the right thing. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I knew I was finally free from the lies, the betrayal, the pain. I could finally start to heal, to move on with my life. It's been a few months now, and things are starting to look up. I've thrown myself into my work, picked up some new hobbies, and even started dating again. I'm not looking for anything serious just yet, but it's nice to know that there's life after Lisa. Looking back, I realized that the accident was a blessing in disguise. It opened my eyes to the truth, to the fact that my marriage was built on lies. It was a hard lesson to learn, but I'm stronger for it. I've learned a lot about myself through all of this, about my strength, my resilience, and my ability to move on. And as for Lisa? Well, she's just a chapter in my story that I've finally closed. But there's one more thing I did that I haven't told you about yet. After the divorce was finalized, I decided to get a little bit of revenge. I know it's petty, but I couldn't help myself. Lisa had always been very particular about her social media presence. She was always posting pictures of us, of our life together, making everything look perfect to the outside world. So, I decided to mess with that image a bit. I created a fake account and started posting all the evidence I'd gathered during our marriage, pictures, messages, everything. I made sure to tag her in every post, so all of her friends and family would see it. It wasn't long before people started commenting, asking her what was going on. The fallout was exactly what I'd hoped for. She lost a lot of friends, her reputation took a hit, and even her family turned against her. It wasn't the most mature thing to do, but it felt good to know that she was finally facing some consequences for her actions. But after a while, I started to feel bad about what I'd done. I realized that I was holding on to too much anger, too much resentment. So, I deleted the account and decided to move on for real this time. I've since moved to a new city, started a new job, and I'm slowly rebuilding my life. It hasn't been easy, but I'm getting there. I'm learning to trust again, to open myself up to new experiences, new people. I still think about Lisa sometimes. I wonder if she ever thinks about me, if she regrets what she did. But I don't dwell on it. I've come to terms with the fact that some people just aren't meant to be in your life forever. They're there to teach you something, to help you grow, and then it's time to let them go. So, if you're reading this and you're going through something similar, just know that you're not alone. It hurts like hell, but you'll get through it. And when you come out on the other side, you'll be stronger, wiser, and ready to start again. Because life doesn't end when someone betrays you. It just begins a new chapter. And sometimes, that's the best thing that could ever happen to you.